Welcome to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump is wasting no time building his team for his second term, quickly filling key advisory and cabinet positions with familiar allies. Here's what we know so far about Trump's upcoming administration. So far, he's tapped these people: Susie Wiles for White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller for Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Elise Stefanik for Ambassador to the United Nations, Tom Humman for Border Czar, Lee Zeldin for EPA Administrator, and Mike Waltz for National Security Advisor. And in a somewhat surprising pick, given Trump's America First and anti-interventionist stances, not to mention their previous colorful clashes, Florida Senator Marco Rubio is rumored to be Trump's choice for Secretary of State.
Here's how CNN is reacting to all of this news.
Trump Jr., Donald Trump Jr. on this, he says there's something about having someone from the outside, the establishment, from outside the establishment to further protect you from the establishment. Yeah. He was arguing against Marco Rubio, and here we are.
That's a very odd argument. And you also heard earlier today an entire Twitter war among the grassroots saying, block Mike Pompeo, block Nikki Haley. How is Marco Rubio any different than the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo or Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador? I mean, it's clearly someone who is considered a neocon, and for so long, this was part of the reason why he wasn't chosen as vice president. I mean, there was an argument made internally that he was too much of a neocon, and that was by Don Jr., and that's why they went with J.D. Vance. I do know that Marco Rubio got priority above others because he was on the short list for VP, and also Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, was really pushing hard for Marco Rubio.
Yeah, look, Marco Rubio is, I think, someone in that neoconservative mold that libertarians like myself, or libertarians who have been working to push Trump world figures into adapting more libertarian stances, particularly on foreign policy, are right to be disappointed about this choice. Maybe Elise Stefanik a little bit too, for having a similar ideology. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely more of a war hawk than we were coming to expect from this Trump team. But that being said, this is obviously not set in stone yet. I'm kind of curious about some of the leaks that have been coming out of the transition team. We know that Trump is well known to feed different information to different people so he can root out leakers. So far, basically how it's worked is the ones that are real have been reported by some outlet like CNN or Politico, and then immediately confirmed on Truth Social by Trump. Rubio has not been yet confirmed as time of taping by Trump on Truth Social, but was leaked to Caitlin Collins at CNN, which I think is kind of notable. And then another thing that he does is he actually allows these leaks as a means of sort of testing the waters as to the reaction to some of these picks. So it could be he kind of wanted to put the Rubio name out there and see how his base kind of responded to it, how his son, obviously, Don Jr., responded to it publicly. So that could be part of the calculation as well. But I don't think it's as of a red flag moment as some of the Trump base are making it out to be. The reason why is if you listen to Trump's Joe Rogan interview a few weeks ago, he talked about actually the benefit of having some people within the foreign policy space that were a little bit different ideologically from him, because there is obviously a lot of nuance and middle ground on these questions. It's not just interventionist neocon. And he appreciated having John Bolton standing next to him when he was having these conversations with world leaders, because when he would make threats like, yeah, if you go into South Korea or if you continue your missile games, Rocket Man, I'm going to bomb the hell out of you. Having John Bolton there with his mustache was sort of gave credence to those statements and made him a little bit more unpredictable. Like, John Bolton is crazy enough to do it. So I don't think it's the worst thing to have someone like Marco Rubio there, so long as, and this is the big caveat, that Trump is still going to stick to his internal principle of trying to keep the U.S. out of war.
I mean, the thing I specifically don't love about Marco Rubio is that I think at his core he's a neoconservative, but he has also moved himself all over the ideological map to try to catch fire with the Republican base. He was obviously very, very anti-Trump. Then he's backed off a lot of those stances he had at the time, but I don't think it's because he sincerely converted to economic populism. Like, now he sounds pro-tariff notes. I think he actually is not for tariffs, or I think he hasn't changed his mind. I think the arguments for why he thought tariffs were bad 10 years ago, I bet he still harbors. So then it's just kind of, it's like an insincere commitment to these things. So I don't know how he'll behave on foreign policy, but I would certainly say, and today on Rising, I interviewed Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian Party, who's been very instrumental in, they've invited Trump to participate in the convention to try to push Trump to have more libertarian hirings. And there's some of them are happening that are going to make libertarians somewhat happy. If we got a member of the Paul family or Thomas Massey or something like that in a position of power, that'd be great. But this is not. And then him saying, no role for Nikki Haley, no role for Mike Pompeo was something that was going to make libertarians happy. This is clearly not. One of the others that got mentioned but has not yet been confirmed was going to be Kristi Nome for Department of Homeland Security, which I think it took me by surprise. I didn't think her name was still in contention for anything. And honestly, given the nature of the work that the Department of Homeland Security does, I'm never going to like the person in that role because it's just a job I don't like. It's a job of violating American civil liberties. But what I will say about her is that her pandemic era governance was more, as governor of South Dakota, was more against civil liberties violations, even by Republican standards. So maybe that's not the worst pick.
Yeah, I mean, she did a really good job during the pandemic. She, along with DeSantis, were some of the first to get their states opened up. But I have a lot of qualms with Kristi Nome. One of my biggest is that she immediately faltered in the face of media and Democrat pressure when she was set to sign a bill preventing men from participating in women's sports at the collegiate level by saying, well, businesses are going to be mad at us and the NCAA is going to pull tournaments from our state, which is going to be bad for the economy. And from the conservative perspective on that issue, it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to stand up to business on an issue that's like fundamental to women's rights and it's just the morally correct thing to do, then when are you going to stand up to big business? So I thought that was a huge error. She also said that the other reason she didn't want to do it is because trial lawyers are going to make a lot of money on this, referring to the fact that girls might sue the NCAA or the state for allowing boys to participate in competitions, which again is like, okay, well, I think they should have the right to sue. So I thought she handled that really poorly from my conservative perspective. And if she is going to fold so quickly to pressure like that, that's not someone you want at the head of a department that is going to be probably the focal point of the administration and is going to be making a lot of really difficult decisions that are going to piss people off, right? Like Tom Homan running mass deportations is going to be the type of thing that requires a very strong backbone spokesperson to talk about that in front of the media or in briefings, and her record suggests that she's not going to be the type of person that can stand there stiff-spined as they're getting all of this flack for these policies.
So that's what you think we're getting? We're getting mass deportations?
I hope so.
I do not hope so.
I know.
I am fine with deporting or arresting, criminalizing, getting rid of people who are engaged in other crimes. Absolutely. We want to get illegal immigrant robbers and assaulters, et cetera, out. I think that's totally uncontroversial, and if more needs to be done there, fine. I don't really, if deporting like people who've lived here a long time and are just working and are not taking up resources, we're really going to go door to door, start making grandma show her papers and out of the country?
I don't know, but I do think the priority obviously will be the criminals. There are more than 1 million, according to counts, of people with confirmed criminal records who are in the country illegally. And then it will go to recent arrivals under the Biden administration. So I hope for at least the first 2 years you can be happy with the plans.
Yeah, I think people are, I don't know, I think if it ends up actually being mass, but rather than just I think what the American people, I mean, I'm not trying to, Trump won. He got a massive mandate to do whatever he wants. I think people, when they say they want more immigration enforcement, which they clearly do, I think what they're talking about is the crime problem to the extent it's attributable to illegal or anyone else. I hope they take crime more seriously, regardless of the immigration status of the people committing crime. I mean, in D.C., I said this before, it is not immigrants committing the crimes we're dealing with here. As far as I can tell from looking at the demographics, it's people who are born here, and the city hasn't been able to deal with that properly. So I hope the administration brings some stability and, makes good on the promises to get the country back on the right track. And we'll see if this is the team to do it. I'm still kind of waiting to find out what role people like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and Elon Musk, if any, are going to play in the administration. I assume Elon doesn't actually want a position.
No,
he just behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would also guess that people like that will probably be in roles that don't require Senate confirmation. Like, that's why Tom Homan was put in the border czar role as opposed to being head of DHS, because then they can kind of do their thing without having to worry about getting,
those pesky civil liberties violations
well, not
or something.
that, just Senate confirmation, because the Republicans still only have like a 2 or 3 seat majority, and that includes people like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, who are not exactly like Trump acolytes. So that's the real explanation for it.
All right, we'll be back with more free media in just a minute. Keep watching.